Most of us only really remember our hearts when one day they start to feel tired, start to ache, or start sending out a signal that makes us worry. But for many years before that, the human heart has quietly been doing the most miraculous job in your body without ever asking for a single word of thanks. Welcome to Sleep by Knowledge. Tonight, we are not going to look at the human heart as a familiar symbol on greeting cards or in love stories, but as a quiet life center that has been with you since before you even had your first memory. What is astonishing is that the human heart begins its story while the body is still taking shape, and then throughout your whole life, that small organ, only about the size of a fist, never stops creating its own rhythm, pushing blood through a network as long as invisible rivers, reaching the brain, the lungs, the hands, the feet, and every single cell, keeping you here in this very moment. But the more closely you look, the more profound the human heart becomes. It does not just respond when you run fast, when you're afraid, or when you're overwhelmed with emotion. It also changes with each slow breath, in a restful sleep, and through the years of youth, adulthood, and old age. It carries the living history of the entire body. It reflects the way you rest, the way you carry stress, the way you heal, and even the way human beings learn humility in the face of their own fragile lives. If you stay until the final truth, you will not only understand how the human heart works, but also begin to feel why such a quiet organ has become the deepest symbol of life, endurance, and hope. So, if you enjoy these slow and gentle journeys into knowledge, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you truly want to stay with these soft and peaceful journeys. And now, dim your screen just a little. Let your shoulders relax. Breathe in nice and slowly, and listen to the story of the human heart, the organ that has quietly kept you alive one beat at a time through your entire life. And if tonight we move a little more slowly and listen a little more deeply, then perhaps the first thing worth remembering about the human heart is that it does not wait until you can speak, walk, or say your own name before it begins to work. The human heart opened your story from a much earlier moment, when the body was still a structure quietly taking shape. In the very first weeks of prenatal development, before there was a fully formed face, before there were hands that could reach out, before there were eyes that could see, the first cells gradually began arranging themselves to create the foundation of the human heart. It is a gentle truth, but also a powerful one, because it shows that life does not begin with thought. It begins with rhythm. The human heart is one of the earliest working organs in the developing body. At around the third week of pregnancy, specialized groups of cells begin gathering in the region that will become the first circulatory center. From there, a primitive heart tube forms. It is very simple compared with the four-chambered heart that comes later, but it already carries the blueprint of an organ that will work non-stop for decades. At around day 22 after fertilization, that primitive heart structure can begin to contract. That means that very early on, the human heart is not just a shape being drawn. It is already a motion truly taking place. Why does the human heart have to begin so early? The answer lies in the most basic needs of living tissue. As the body grows, cells can no longer rely only on simple diffusion to receive nutrients and oxygen. The distances become too great, and the organization becomes too complex. At that point, the human heart has to appear as a transport center, delivering to each developing region what it needs in order to keep forming. In other words, if the human heart did not begin working early, many other organs would not be able to develop normally either. The forming brain needs blood, the developing liver needs blood, the growing limbs need blood, and so the human heart becomes one of the first foundations that allows the entire rest of the body to continue writing its own story. What is beautiful is that the human heart does not go from simple to complex in one sudden leap. It changes shape continuously, slowly, and precisely. From the original primitive heart tube, the human heart begins to bend, twist, and fold in very specific ways. That process is not random at all. It is part of a delicate arrangement that will later form the two atria, the two ventricles, and the pathways where blood enters and leaves. If you looked at it in the very early stages, you would not see a complete heart like the one in an anatomy book. You would see an organ organizing itself. And right here, the human heart gives us one of its first lessons about life. Many of the most important things do not appear in finished form from the very beginning. They mature through rhythm, through motion, and through time. When the human heart begins to contract, it does not work exactly like the heart of an adult. That makes perfect sense because life before birth exists in a very different environment. A fetus does not breathe with its lungs the way we do after birth. Oxygen comes through the placenta from the mother's body and then travels through the blood into the fetus. Because of that, the human heart at this stage has to work within a special, temporary and remarkably intelligent circulatory system. It is a network designed specifically for life in the womb. Blood does not need to pass through the lungs for gas exchange in the familiar way it does after birth, because the fetal lungs are not yet handling respiration. Instead, the human heart works together with special openings and vessels to direct blood along the most efficient path for that moment in life. One of the strangest and most fascinating things about the human heart before birth is the presence of the foramen ovale, an opening between the two atria that allows most of the blood to move from the right side to the left side without passing through the lungs that are not yet active. Alongside that is the ductus arteriosus, which connects the pulmonary artery to the aorta and helps blood continue bypassing the lungs and moving into the rest of the circulation. And there is one more structure that plays a very important transitional role, the ductus venosus, which helps oxygen-rich blood from the placenta pass through the liver along a special route so it can quickly join the central circulation. Those structures are not there to stay forever. They are temporary and highly precise solutions for one single stage of human life. So the human heart is not just an organ that pumps blood. From the very beginning, it has also been a master of adaptation. When adults hear a fetal heartbeat for the first time through modern monitoring tools, the feeling is often unforgettable. Many people describe it as the moment they truly realize that a new human being is on the way. From a physiological point of view, a fetal heart rate is usually faster than the heart rate of an adult. During many stages of pregnancy, the fetal heart rate commonly falls between 110 and 160 beats per minute. There is nothing unusual about that, because a developing body has a higher metabolic demand, and its cardiovascular regulation is also different from that of an adult. But emotionally, that heartbeat often sounds like the first announcement of life. No one has seen the face clearly yet, no one has heard a cry yet, and no shared memories exist yet. But the human heart has already spoken first. In truth, even though we remember nothing from that stage, the human heart is already leaving its mark on the entire future structure of the body. The division into 4 chambers, the formation of the valves, the organization of the major blood vessels entering and leaving the heart, all of it happens in an astonishing order. Just one small change in these developmental steps can lead to a congenital heart defect. And that is one of the reasons the human heart is studied so deeply in developmental medicine. Because when we look at how the heart forms, we do not only learn about the heart itself, we also learn how a complex organ is built through countless biological signals working together with precise timing. In a very beautiful sense, the human heart is proof that life is not just a pile of matter. It is the right arrangement of countless small things moving in rhythm. Some human hearts enter the world with congenital differences. Some valves may not form completely as expected. Some walls may still have openings. Some major vessels may connect in a different way. These things remind us that the process of forming the human heart is so intricate that if even one link changes, the entire flow that follows may also change. But from here, another story also begins, one that is deeply human and deeply modern. Medicine has learned how to listen, detect, monitor, and in many cases repair those differences very early. When we speak about the human heart, we are always standing between 2 realities that exist side by side, the fragility of biology and the growing depth of human understanding of that biology. Then comes a moment that may be the first great turning point in the journey of the human heart, the moment of birth. Before that instant, the fetal circulatory system still depends on the placenta and those special temporary pathways. But when the baby lets out that first cry and the lungs begin to open to air, a major change happens immediately. Resistance in the blood vessels of the lungs drops as the lungs begin to work. More blood starts flowing into the lungs for oxygen exchange. Pressure inside the chambers of the heart changes, and those changes gradually cause the foramen ovale to close functionally, while the ductus arteriosus also tightens and then gradually closes after birth. The human heart, which once lived by the rules of the world inside the womb, now shifts to the rules of air, of breath, and of life outside. It is an incredibly profound transition. We often think the first thing at birth is the cry. But from a physiological point of view, it is also one of the greatest reorganizations the human heart will ever go through. In a very short span of time, it has to change the direction of flow, change the pressure relationships, and change the way it works together with the lungs. And most of the time, it does all of that so successfully that we think of it as something ordinary. Perhaps it is exactly because the human heart works so quietly that people so easily forget how extraordinary it is. We only see a baby sleeping peacefully. But inside, the human heart has just completed one of the most beautiful and significant adaptations in all of life. From the very first minutes after birth, heart sounds also become one of the most important signs for judging whether a baby is adapting well to life outside the womb. Medical staff listen to the heartbeat and observe skin colour, breathing and reflexes, because at that moment the human heart is speaking for many other parts of the body. A steady heartbeat does not simply mean that the heart is beating. It means circulation is working, oxygen is being delivered, the brain is being nourished, and the tissues are being given the chance to keep living and developing. So right at the very first threshold of life, the human heart is already the central sign of organised living presence. There is a truth here that is very gentle, but also very vast. None of us can remember our first heartbeat. None of us can remember the moment when our human heart was still a tiny tube that had only just begun to contract. None of us can remember the moment when our circulation shifted into the rhythm of the outside world, but that does not make those moments any less real. In fact, it makes the story of the human heart even deeper. Because this organ has been loyal to you since before memory, before language, and before all the choices you would later call your life. And perhaps that is one reason the human heart has always held a special place in the human imagination. Science understands very well that the heart is a mechanical and bioelectrical organ, not the anatomical home of the soul. But when people thousands of years ago placed a hand on the chest and felt that beat, they sensed something there that seemed close to the core of life itself. Today, even though embryology, physiology and cardiology have explained much more, that feeling has not disappeared at all. If anything, it has grown deeper. Because now we know that the human heart is not honoured merely because of symbolism, it is respected because of what it truly does. In every day of pregnancy, the human heart is learning how to become itself. In every subtle change of fetal circulation, the human heart is preparing for its first meeting with air. In the moment of birth, the human heart does not simply keep beating. It changes the way it beats so it can fit a new world. And seen that way, the story of a human life does not really begin with the first spoken word. It begins with a series of quiet adaptations made by the human heart. It is the first to arrive. It is the first to go to work. And in a very quiet sense, it is also the first to keep a promise to life. Perhaps once we understand that, we begin to look at the human heart differently, no longer as just an organ inside the chest, but as the oldest witness to our own lives. It was there before the first memory, before we even knew we existed. And from those earliest moments, the human heart was already showing its true nature. Small but never simple, quiet but never ordinary, fragile but organised with a biological intelligence so beautiful it almost feels beyond belief. But what is even more astonishing is that this organ, which begins so early, is built with an architecture that is almost perfectly suited for an entire human lifetime. If you place your hand on your chest on a quiet night, it is easy to imagine that the human heart is only a small mass tapping steadily in the darkness of the ribcage. But when we look more closely, the human heart appears not as a simple object, but as a living structure arranged with astonishing precision. In an adult, the human heart is usually about the size of that person's closed fist. Its weight varies depending on sex, body size, level of physical activity, and overall health, but in general, it is not a large organ. What makes the human heart extraordinary has never been its size, it is its efficiency. Such a small organ can keep blood moving through the entire body day and night, year after year, through most of a human life. Many people grow up with the feeling that the human heart sits entirely on the left side of the chest. That impression is not without reason, because the tip of the heart points to the left, and part of the human heart does lie more toward that side, making its beat easier to feel in the left half of the chest. But in reality, the human heart sits much closer to the centre of the chest than many people imagine, behind the breastbone, between the two lungs, in a space called the mediastinum. About 2/3 of the heart's mass extends to the left of the body's midline, while the rest still remains on the right. That means the human heart does not truly live on just one side. It stands in a central position, exactly as its role suggests. It rests between the lungs, slightly tilted, slightly turned, as if that very arrangement had been chosen to make it easier to send blood everywhere it needs to go. When anatomists open the curtain of the chest, they do not see a stylized heart shape like the one in drawings. They see an organ shaped more like a hollow muscular cone, broad at the top and pointed at the bottom, with its tip angled downward and to the left. That shape is not an accident of beauty. It is the result of function. The human heart must be compact enough to sit safely inside the chest, strong enough to create forceful contractions, and flexible enough to expand and relax with each beat of blood flow. That is also why the human heart is not flat or perfectly symmetrical like the familiar symbol. It is a living form shaped by pressure, the direction of flow, and the position of the large blood vessels entering and leaving it. Inside the human heart are 4 chambers, but those 4 chambers are not simply 4 empty spaces sitting side by side. They are more like 4 rooms in a house where each door opens only at exactly the right moment. The 2 upper chambers are the atria, the 2 lower chambers are the ventricles. The right atrium receives oxygen-poor blood returning from the entire body through the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. The left atrium receives oxygen-rich blood returning from the lungs through the pulmonary veins. From there, blood moves down into the 2 ventricles. The right ventricle pumps blood to the lungs for gas exchange. The left ventricle pumps blood out through the aorta to nourish the whole body. Just looking at that arrangement already shows that the human heart does not pump blood along one simple straight path. It coordinates 2 connected circulatory loops, one to receive oxygen and one to distribute life. If we listen more deeply, we begin to see that although both sides of the human heart work within the same heartbeat, they do not carry the same pressure. The right side of the human heart only needs to push blood to the lungs, a shorter journey with lower resistance. Because of that, the muscular wall of the right ventricle is thinner. The left side of the human heart is different. It has to create enough force to send blood to the brain, the kidneys, the liver, the muscles of the legs, and every tissue that needs nourishment. That is why the wall of the left ventricle is much thicker. Simply by placing those 2 chambers side by side, we can read the heart's division of labour very clearly. One side serves a shorter, lower pressure trip. The other carries the heavier responsibility for the entire body. No chamber is unnecessary. No part was created without a purpose. Between the chambers of the heart, and between the heart and the major blood vessels, are the valves. And if the human heart is a living structure, then those valves are like doors that allow blood to move in only one direction. Between the right atrium and the right ventricle is the tricuspid valve. Between the left atrium and the left ventricle is the mitral valve, also called the bicuspid valve. At the exit of the right ventricle is the pulmonary valve. At the exit of the left ventricle is the aortic valve. These valves do not open by hand. There are no invisible strings pulling them, and they do not need a spoken command. They open and close according to pressure differences. When the pressure on one side becomes higher at the right moment, the valve opens. When blood tries to flow backward, the valve closes. In the quiet of the chest, the human heart is operating with such refined mechanics that most of us know it only through the faint sound of a heartbeat. That very sound is what makes many people curious from childhood. When a doctor places a stethoscope on the chest, we're often told that we are hearing the human heart. But what we hear is not the heart muscle striking the ribs. It is mainly the sound made by the valves closing and the blood creating vibrations in the heart structure. The first sound, often described as lub, is mainly related to the closing of the mitral valve and the tricuspid valve as the ventricles begin to contract. The second sound, dub, is related to the closing of the aortic valve and the pulmonary valve as the ventricles begin to relax. These 2 sounds come together to form the familiar rhythm we hear as a pair of small waves repeating again and again. It is a sign that inside the human heart, The doors are opening and closing at the right time, and the blood is being kept on the correct path. What is lovely about the human heart is that even this simple sound tells a story of order. If a valve becomes narrowed, blood has to pass through the tight space at a higher speed, and that can create a murmur. If a valve does not close tightly, some blood can leak backward and create an abnormal sound. By listening to the human heart, medicine learned long ago how to recognize when that living structure has a door that is no longer closing fully or a passage that has become too narrow. It is one of the beautiful things about clinical medicine. Just through listening and experience, people can recognize that inside the human heart, where we cannot look directly, something has begun to change. The wall of the human heart is not just one simple layer of muscle either. It is made of several layers, each with its own role. The innermost layer is called the endocardium, a thin, smooth lining that helps the inside of the heart chambers stay slick so blood can move more easily. The middle layer is the myocardium, the thick and most important layer for contraction. The outermost layer is the epicardium, which is associated with the sac surrounding the heart on the outside. It is the myocardium that most clearly shows the strength of the human heart. This is a special kind of striated muscle, different from the skeletal muscles in the arms and legs because it works without our conscious control. You can decide whether or not to lift a cup, but you do not have to give an order for the human heart to contract. It works in silence, through its own regulating mechanisms, faithful to its task even while you're deeply asleep. When viewed under a microscope, the heart muscle of the human heart reveals the beauty of adaptation even more clearly. Heart muscle cells can connect to one another through special structures that allow electrical signals and contractile force to spread rapidly. Because of that, the human heart does not contract one cell at a time in a scattered way. It contracts as a coordinated whole. The atria contract first, then the ventricles, all in a sequence that is remarkably orderly. Without that coordination, the human heart would not be able to pump blood efficiently. That is why such a small structure can still take on a job that, if given to a mechanical machine on the outside, would require extremely high synchronization to do the same thing. But there is one detail that is easy to forget. The human heart pumps blood to nourish the entire body, yet it also needs nourishment itself, just like every other organ. The heart muscle cannot simply touch the blood inside the chambers and take oxygen directly from it in a way that would meet its needs. The wall of the heart is too thick, the working pressure is too high, and the activity is too constant. That is why the human heart needs its own specialized blood supply. This is the coronary artery system. The two main coronary arteries arise from the base of the aorta, just above the aortic valve, and then branch out across the surface of the human heart like small limbs wrapping around the trunk of an extremely important tree. The right coronary artery usually supplies blood to the right side of the heart and part of the conduction system. The left coronary artery usually divides into major branches that feed the front, the side, and a very important region of the left ventricle. Just imagining the human heart losing a large part of its oxygen supply from those coronary arteries for only a few minutes is enough to understand why coronary artery disease is such a serious problem. When plaque builds up inside the coronary arteries, the blood flow feeding the heart muscle can be obstructed. When a coronary artery becomes completely blocked, part of the heart muscle can suffer severe oxygen deprivation and die, which medicine calls a heart attack or myocardial infarction. In other words, even though the human heart is the center of circulation, it does not stand outside the common rules of biology. It still depends on oxygen. It can still be injured. It still needs careful nourishment. Perhaps that is exactly what makes us respect the human heart even more. The organ that carries responsibility for the whole body also carries within itself one very humble need: to be properly sustained. Surrounding the human heart is a special covering called the pericardium, or the pericardial sac. This structure has two main layers with a thin space containing a small amount of fluid in between. That small amount of fluid works like lubrication, helping the human heart move inside the chest with less friction as it contracts and relaxes continuously. The pericardium also helps keep the position of the heart relatively stable, limits sudden excessive expansion, and provides a certain amount of mechanical protection. When everything is normal, we are hardly aware that this membrane even exists. But if the pericardium becomes inflamed, or if too much fluid builds up in the pericardial space, the human heart can have difficulty expanding to receive blood. Such a delicate detail reminds us that in the body, things that seem merely supportive can sometimes play an enormous role. The more deeply we look at how blood moves through the chambers and the valves of the heart, the more the human heart resembles a mechanical dance choreographed with such precision that it almost feels impossible for it to be accidental. When the atria contract, blood is pushed down into the ventricles. When the ventricles begin to contract, pressure rises quickly, and the atrioventricular valves close, preventing blood from flowing backward. Then, when pressure inside the ventricles rises above the pressure in the arteries, the arterial valves open so blood can move out. When the ventricles relax, the pressure falls, and the arterial valves close so blood does not flow backward from the arteries into the heart. All of this happens in each beat of the human heart within fractions of a second, and for most of life, the process runs so smoothly that we hear no chaos at all, only a steady and orderly rhythm inside the chest. Even the small tendinous cords and muscular projections inside the ventricles help keep the human heart working accurately. The mitral valve and the tricuspid valve do not simply swing open and close like doors hanging in the wind. They are held by small cords called chordae tendineae, which connect to papillary muscles in the ventricular wall. When the ventricles contract, the papillary muscles contract as well, keeping the valve leaflets from flipping backward into the atria. If that mechanism fails, a valve can prolapse or leak, allowing blood to flow backward and reducing pumping efficiency. Even a tiny detail like that shows that the human heart does not rely on any single part to complete its job. It is the cooperation of chambers, valves, tendinous cords, papillary muscles, muscular walls, and pressure differences. Everything is linked together, and that very linkage is what gives it such reliability. When we think about the durability of the human heart, the numbers alone are enough to make us fall silent. A normal heart can beat about 100,000 times each day, which adds up to tens of millions of times each year, and billions of times over an entire lifetime. Very few machines made by human beings can work continuously with that rhythm for many decades, while still maintaining the kind of efficiency the human heart does. Of course, the heart is not a mindless machine. It grows tired when disease affects it, it weakens when it is injured, and it changes with age. But the fact that it can work so steadily under normal conditions for so many years is already a biological triumph. That endurance does not come from rough force. It comes from skillful structure, from coordination, and from each part of the human heart doing exactly what it is meant to do. The endurance of the human heart is also sustained by wise economy. The heart does not contract non-stop without rest, like a muscle straining continuously. Each cardiac cycle includes both contraction and relaxation. It is during the relaxation phase that the heart chambers fill again with blood. The heart muscle receives blood through the coronary arteries, and this entire living structure prepares for the next beat. If we only notice the powerful contraction and forget the brief rest between beats, we miss one beautiful truth about the human heart. Endurance does not come from never stopping. It comes from knowing how to alternate at the right time between activity and recovery. Perhaps that is also one of the quiet lessons the body has been whispering to us from the very beginning. Sometimes, to understand the human heart better, we only need to imagine what would happen if one small part of its architecture stopped doing its job properly. If a valve narrows, the heart has to create more pressure to push blood through it. If a valve leaks, the heart has to work harder to make up for the blood flowing backward. If the muscular wall becomes abnormally thick from long-term high blood pressure, the human heart can become stiffer and have more trouble relaxing well. If the coronary arteries become narrowed, the heart muscle can be deprived of oxygen. If fluid builds up in the pericardium, the heart can be compressed. Just a few small changes are enough to show how delicate the balance is that the human heart maintains every day. We often only recognize a beautiful structure when one brick slips out of place. The same is true of the human heart. Its normal function is so steady that we easily forget it's the result of many conditions being maintained with precision. Even so, the more carefully we understand the structure of the human heart, the more we realize this is not only a mechanical story. Yes, there are chambers, valves, muscle, coronary arteries, and the pericardial sac. But behind all those parts we can name lies a very deep biological philosophy. Every part of the human heart exists to serve flow in the right direction. No movement is showy. No detail is unnecessary. Everything is directed towards sending blood where it needs to go, and then receiving that blood back again. In that sense, the human heart is like a quiet centre of connection. It does not keep life for itself. It sustains life by constantly sending life outward to somewhere else. Perhaps that is why many people, when they first see an anatomical image of the human heart, feel both surprised and moved. They realise that the organ they had long felt only through moments of nervousness or fatigue is actually a very real, very tangible, and very beautiful structure in a biological way. It does not need to be turned into myth to inspire wonder. The human heart is already astonishing enough. Just the fact that 4 chambers can take turns receiving and pushing blood, that 4 valves can open and close according to pressure differences, that the heart muscle can contract in synchrony, that the coronary arteries can nourish the very organ that nourishes the whole body, and that the pericardial sac can protect that motion and help it move more smoothly. All of this already tells a story rich with meaning. A small organ, but never a simple one. A narrow space within the chest, yet it holds the art of flow and order. If we listen to the human heart for long enough, we gradually understand that what makes it special is not only the force of pumping blood, but the gentle precision of the entire system. Each chamber knows when to receive and when to push. Each valve knows when to open and when to close. Each layer of the heart wall knows when to contract and when to relax. Each branch of the coronary arteries knows where nourishment must be delivered. In an organ only as large as a fist, there is a kind of biological intelligence that asks us to slow down in order to see it. And once we do, it becomes difficult not to feel a gentle reverence for the human heart. It is small, but never simple. It is quiet, but never ordinary. It is like a living mechanical room where every door opens at exactly the right moment. Every current is guided in the right direction, and every movement serves the life of the whole body. But even then, we are still only standing at the visible part of the story, because the human heart does not work through shape, muscle, and valves alone. Behind the silence of that structure, there is also an invisible stream of signals moving ahead of every contraction, arranging the order, keeping the rhythm, and making sure that this living structure is not only strong, but also synchronized. In other words, the human heart is not only flesh, muscle, and blood. Behind every heartbeat, there is also a living current of electricity, quietly guiding the entire rhythm. And here, the human heart reveals a secret that almost everyone has wondered about at least once in life. If the muscles in your arms need intention before they move, if your legs need a clear signal from the brain before they take a step, then why can the human heart keep beating on its own, even when you are deeply asleep, unconscious, or not thinking about it at all? The answer lies in a quiet, delicate, steady bioelectrical system that almost never asks for attention, yet determines the rhythm of the entire body. The human heart does not wait for a spoken command. It listens to tiny electrical signals so small that we cannot directly feel them, and from those signals, an entire symphony of circulation begins. In the upper part of the right atrium, near where the superior vena cava returns blood to the heart, there is a very special area of tissue called the sinoatrial node. This is the natural pacemaker of the human heart under normal conditions. The cells here are different from most of the other heart muscle cells because they can depolarize on their own in a repeating cycle. Put more gently, they do not need anyone to wake them up before they begin. Inside those cells, the flows of sodium, potassium, and calcium ions shift over time, causing the membrane potential to drift automatically toward the threshold for firing. Once that threshold is reached, an electrical signal is created. Then the process repeats again. That means the human heart already carries within itself a living clock, not one that appears as hands or numbers, but one that exists as electrical rhythm. That automatic quality is one of the strangest and most fascinating features of the human heart. Many tissues in the body only work when the nervous system tells them to, but the human heart can begin its own rhythm by itself. The nervous system can make it faster, slower, stronger, or gentler, but under basic conditions, the human heart itself is the place where the first signal begins. That is why, in classic physiology experiments, a heart supplied with the right environment can continue contracting for a certain period of time even after being separated from the body. What people see in that moment is not magic, but the very unique biology of the human heart. It carries within itself the power to begin on its own, as if life placed an internal starting rhythm there from the very beginning. But if the electrical signal were created only in the sinoatrial node and went nowhere else, the human heart would not be able to pump blood effectively. The secret is not just that electricity exists, but that it must travel along the right path, in the right order, at the right speed. After it begins in the sinoatrial node, the impulse spreads through the muscle of the right atrium and then across to the left atrium, causing both atria to contract almost at the same time. Because of that, blood is pushed down into the ventricles before the ventricles begin their work. This is a very important detail. The human heart does not contract all its chambers at once, because if it did, the process of receiving blood and pumping blood would become chaotic. Instead, it follows a clear order. Atria first, ventricles second. Receive first, push second. That order is exactly what keeps the flow of life moving smoothly. After moving through the atria, the electrical impulse reaches another relay station located in the lower part of the wall between the atria, called the atrioventricular node. If the sinoatrial node is the one that speaks first, then the atrioventricular node is like a careful timekeeper, creating a very short delay before the signal is passed down to the ventricles. That delay lasts only a fraction of a second, but it has enormous importance. It allows the atria to finish pushing blood into the ventricles before the ventricles begin to contract forcefully. Without that carefully timed pause, the human heart would lose the natural rhythm that makes it efficient. This truth may sound purely mechanical, but if you think about it long enough, it is actually beautiful. Inside the human heart, even slowing down serves life. Not everything important comes from speed. Sometimes it is the pause at exactly the right moment that makes all the movement afterward work so well. From the atrioventricular node, the electrical impulse continues down through the atrioventricular bundle, often called the bundle of His, and then divides into the right bundle branch and the left bundle branch along the wall between the ventricles. From there, the signal spreads into the Purkinje fiber network, a very fast conduction system that branches widely through the walls of the ventricles. Thanks to this network, the two ventricles of the human heart can contract almost at the same time, and with enough force to send blood to the lungs and out to the rest of the body. If you only looked with the naked eye, you would simply see one heartbeat. But if you understand what is happening at the level of electrical conduction, you see that every beat of the human heart is the result of a finely arranged pathway. The signal begins in one place, pauses briefly in another, and then speeds up in the final stretch so that the force of contraction arrives at exactly the right time and place. It is like a quiet beam of light passing through invisible hallways, awakening each part of the human heart in the proper order. When the electrical system of the human heart runs smoothly, the heartbeat becomes something we barely notice. But in truth, heart rate is not fixed like the ticking of a mechanical clock. It changes constantly depending on the state of the body. At quiet rest, the heart rate of a healthy adult is usually somewhere between 60 and 100 beats per minute. That range is considered normal in many clinical settings, but normal does not mean identical for everyone. A person who is deeply relaxed, sleeping well, or training regularly may have a slower rate. A person who has just climbed stairs, has a fever, or feels anxious may have a faster one. The human heart does not try to hold on to one rigid number. It adjusts itself to the real needs of the body in each moment. This is where the autonomic nervous system enters the story. Even though the human heart has automaticity, it does not work in isolation. The sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system are constantly influencing heart rate, the force of contraction, and the speed of conduction. When the body needs to act quickly, faces danger, exercises intensely, or is under stress, the sympathetic nervous system becomes more active. It makes the sinoatrial node fire faster, makes conduction through the atrioventricular node easier, and makes the heart muscle contract more strongly. At that point, the human heart increases its pace to send more blood to the muscles, the brain, and the organs that need energy. On the other hand, when the body is calm, digesting, resting, breathing slowly and letting go of tension, the vagus nerve, which belongs to the parasympathetic system, increases its influence and slows the heart rate down. So the human heart does not listen only to itself. It also listens to the nervous atmosphere surrounding the whole body. If you have ever noticed your heart beating faster when you feel anxious, that is not your imagination. When you are frightened, nervous, waiting for an important call, or suddenly hear a loud sound in the night, the body releases substances like adrenaline and noradrenaline, making the heart beat faster and more strongly. This reaction has ancient survival value. It helps human beings prepare for action. But in modern life, that same mechanism can be triggered by work pressure, a late-night message, a sad memory, financial worry, or thoughts that have not yet settled down. In those moments, the human heart is still doing what it was born to do. It is just that the world is sending it too many alarm signals. Understanding this can help us be less angry at our own bodies. Many times, the human heart is not betraying us at all. It is simply reacting faithfully to what it believes is urgent. In the other direction, there are moments when the human heart softens in a very noticeable way. When you sit still in the dark, when your breathing grows longer, when the noise fades, when the body realizes there is no immediate danger in front of it, the heart rate often slows down. This is especially clear at night, particularly during deep sleep. At that time, metabolic demand drops, blood pressure falls to some degree, parasympathetic influence increases, and the human heart settles into a more economical rhythm. You could say that in healthy sleep the human heart never stops working, but it works in a gentler, quieter way, like a watchful guard who has grown familiar with the night. That is why sleep is not only rest for the brain and the muscles. It is also a precious stretch of time in which the cardiovascular system gets to live under less pressure. One of the most beautiful stories in physiology is that heart rate changes with each breath. When you breathe in, the heart rate may speed up slightly. When you breathe out, it may slow down slightly. This phenomenon is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, and in many healthy people, especially young people, it is a normal physiological sign rather than a disease. That means the human heart does not beat separately from the rest of the body. It is listening to the lungs, it is changing its rhythm with the breath. It is taking part in a gentle conversation between respiration, the nervous system, and circulation. That fact alone is enough to make us feel how delicately everything in the body is connected. When you breathe deeply and slowly, it is not only the mind that settles. The human heart also receives the message that, in that moment, the world may be a little safer. A slow heart rate is not always bad, just as a fast heart rate is not always dangerous. In many endurance athletes, people who train for long periods in activities such as long-distance running, cycling or swimming, the resting heart rate can be lower than average, sometimes dropping below 60 beats per minute, while still being completely normal. This happens because their human hearts have adapted. The ventricles, especially the left ventricle, may be able to eject a larger amount of blood with each contraction. When each beat becomes more effective, the heart does not need to beat as quickly as before in order to provide the same amount of blood at rest. At the same time, parasympathetic tone in well-trained people is usually higher, which also contributes to a slower resting rate. In other words, the human heart knows how to learn from habit. If it is trained the right way, it can become more efficient, calmer, and more enduring. Still, not every change in rhythm is a sign of healthy adaptation. When the electrical system of the human heart begins to function abnormally, it is broadly called an arrhythmia. Arrhythmias are not just one single thing. Some make the heart beat too fast, such as supraventricular tachycardia, atrial fibrillation, atrial flutter, and ventricular tachycardia. Some make the heart beat too slowly, such as sick sinus syndrome or high-grade atrioventricular block. Some disorders make the rhythm irregular, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes skipping, sometimes pounding in clusters. The important thing is that not every arrhythmia is equally dangerous. Some are very harmless and mainly create uncomfortable sensations. Others can sharply reduce the heart's ability to pump blood or create a risk of sudden death if they are not treated in time. So when we speak about the human heart, we are speaking about an electrical system that is both enduring and delicate. A disruption in just one link can change the entire rhythm. Many people have felt at times as though their heart just missed a beat, or suddenly gave a strange thump followed by a stronger beat afterward. In many cases, that is caused by a premature beat, meaning a beat that comes earlier than normal and may arise from the atria or the ventricles. After that early beat, the heart usually has a short pause or a slightly longer one, which makes the next beat feel more noticeable. That sensation can be startling, especially at night when the room is quiet and your attention is focused on the body. Many scattered premature beats in otherwise healthy people may not be dangerous, especially when they are infrequent and do not come with worrying symptoms. But if they happen often, or come with chest pain, shortness of breath, fainting, dizziness, or an underlying heart condition, they need to be evaluated seriously. What matters here is understanding that the human heart can sometimes produce beats that are not perfectly regular without always signalling disaster, but they also should not be dismissed carelessly under all circumstances. There are times when the electrical system of the human heart can no longer safely keep its role as the pacemaker or the distributor of rhythm. At that point, modern medicine has found a very remarkable solution called the pacemaker. This device does not replace the heart's pumping function. It replaces the missing or overly slow electrical signal. By sending out small electrical impulses through leads placed inside the heart chambers, a pacemaker helps the human heart maintain an appropriate rate when the sinoatrial node is too slow, or when conduction from the atria to the ventricles has been seriously interrupted. The idea sounds very modern, but behind it is a very basic observation. Human beings learn that sometimes, in order for the human heart to keep working, the most important thing is not replacing structure, but restoring rhythm. One electrical impulse at the right moment can bring an entire organ back into order. Alongside pacemakers, there are also other devices such as implantable cardioverter defibrillators, which are used to detect and intervene when dangerous ventricular arrhythmias appear. This shows that medicine today no longer sees the human heart only as a mechanical block that breaks and then gets repaired. Medicine has learned how to speak with the heart's electrical system, monitor it, decode it, and in some cases help guide it back to a safer rhythm. From the simple electrocardiogram that records the shape of electrical waves, to deeper electrophysiology studies inside the heart chambers, the journey of studying the human heart over more than a century has shown that a normal heartbeat is the result of many layers of coordination. The more clearly we understand it, the more we realize that what once looked simple is actually very rich. Another interesting truth is that the electrical system of the human heart is also influenced by temperature. The levels of electrolytes in the blood, medications, hormones, and illnesses affecting the whole body. When a person has a high fever, the heart may beat faster. When there is severe dehydration, heart rate may rise to make up for the lower circulating blood volume. When potassium or calcium levels in the blood are abnormal, the excitability and conduction of the heart can change. Some asthma medicines, cold medicines, thyroid medicines, or stimulants such as caffeine in high amounts can also affect rhythm. This reminds us that the human heart does not hang in the body like an independent clock all by itself. It responds to the body's overall chemical picture. Everything is connected. A change in the blood, in hormones, or in the nervous state can rewrite the heart's electrical rhythm for a short while or for much longer. That is also why, when doctors look at a heart rate, they do not see only a number. A rate of 80 in one person and a rate of 80 in another person can mean very different things if the context is different. A person who is asleep but whose heart is still racing may suggest a very different story from a person who has just finished walking and has a similar rate. A slow heart rate in someone who runs regularly is completely different from a slow heart rate in someone who feels dizzy, exhausted, and has a conduction block. The human heart does not speak only in numbers. It speaks through context. It speaks through whether the rhythm is steady or unsteady. It speaks through the sensations that come with it. It speaks through the way its rhythm fits with or falls out of step with the rest of the body. When we listen to the human heart the right way, we are not just counting beats. We are reading part of living physiology. If we step back for a moment, this whole story begins to feel both scientific and deeply human. The human heart generates its own signals, yet still listens to the nervous system. The human heart has a fixed conduction pathway, yet still adjusts flexibly to breathing, sleep, exercise, aging, and emotion. The human heart can endure for decades, yet it can also fall out of rhythm because of one small change in electrolytes or in structure. Perhaps it is exactly this combination of stability and vulnerability that makes the human heart such a powerful image of our own lives. We also live through rhythms that are fairly steady, yet never completely the same. We also need order, yet are changed by the world every day. And at the deepest level, the human heart reminds us that life is not perfect stillness. It is the ability to keep a rhythm in the middle of countless ongoing influences. On some nights, if you lie still long enough, you will begin to feel the human heart more as a quiet presence than as a sound. It does not ask whether you succeeded today or not. It does not judge what still remains unfinished. It simply keeps firing, keeps spreading its signals, keeps making sure that the atria and the ventricles meet at exactly the right moment in a choreography that most of the time we never even see. And perhaps the most beautiful thing about that electrical system is that it shows us that order is not always loud. Inside the human heart, the things that decide life usually happen in silence. No fireworks, no grand announcement, only very small electrical waves travelling through very narrow pathways and then turning into a force that sends blood everywhere. Once we understand that, we begin to see our own heartbeat in a different way. It is no longer just the thing that races when we are emotional, or the thing that scares us when we suddenly hear it in the night. It is the sign of an internal system working without rest to keep the whole body connected. Every beat is the result of the sinoatrial node waking up at the right moment, the atrioventricular node knowing how to wait at the right moment, the conduction bundle knowing which path to take, the Purkinje fibers knowing where to spread, the nervous system knowing how much to intervene, and the blood and chemicals in the body staying within a workable range. So heart rate is not merely a number on a screen or under your fingertips at the wrist. The heartbeat of the human heart is the briefest summary of the body's living condition in that present moment. And when that electrical rhythm is released at exactly the right time, the human heart begins to send out something even greater than the sound of itself. It sends out the river of blood that nourishes the entire body, quietly leaving the chest to carry oxygen, warmth, and life to places so far away that your own hands will never touch them. And from that moment on, the human heart is no longer just a closed organ resting inside the chest. When the electrical signal is released at exactly the right time, when the chambers of the heart have contracted in the proper order, the human heart begins sending out its most precious gift, the blood that carries oxygen, warmth, hormones, nutrients, and the very possibility of life for every cell. If you imagine the body as a vast land, then the human heart is the source of rivers that never stop flowing. And what makes this story so extraordinary is that those rivers do not flow at random. They are guided through two major circulatory loops, two connected journeys, so that each heartbeat does not merely create a sound in the chest, but sends a wave outward to almost every place in the body. On the right side, the human heart receives oxygen-poor blood returning from the entire body, and then pumps that blood up to the lungs. This is the pulmonary circulation. It is not as long as the journey through the whole body, but it is absolutely essential because this is where the blood is renewed with oxygen and releases most of its carbon dioxide. From the lungs, oxygen-rich blood returns to the left side of the human heart, then is pumped forcefully into the aorta to begin the systemic circulation. This loop carries blood to the brain, the liver, the kidneys, the intestines, the skin, the muscles, the bones, and even the tiny tissues we rarely stop to think about. Those two circulatory loops follow one another like two halves of a piece of music. Without the first loop, the blood cannot pick up oxygen. Without the second, that oxygen cannot reach the places that need it. And so, the human heart does not pump blood along one simple straight line. It coordinates two different journeys in order to keep life moving. The blood that the human heart sends out is not some anonymous fluid. It is a special connective tissue in which plasma carries many dissolved substances, while blood cells take on very specific roles. Red blood cells are among the most important companions of the human heart because they carry hemoglobin, the protein that can bind oxygen in the lungs and then release it into the tissues. Thanks to those red blood cells, each contraction of the human heart is not just pushing a stream of liquid farther away, it is delivering the most important fuel cells need for aerobic respiration. When oxygen arrives, cells can produce energy efficiently. When that oxygen flow is reduced, everything begins to slow down, from thought and movement to the function of entire organs. In other words, the human heart does not directly create life for each cell, but it is the carrier of the conditions that allow that life to continue. The human heart does not send out only oxygen. It also carries glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, vitamins, minerals, and hormones. After a meal, the blood carries nutrients absorbed from the intestines to the liver and then continues distributing them to many other places. When an endocrine gland releases hormones into the blood, it is the human heart that helps those chemical signals reach their target tissues. When the body needs to heal a wound, immune factors and platelets are also delivered by the circulation the human heart maintains. The more closely we look, the more we realize that the human heart does not only send oxygen. It sends messages between organs. It carries hormonal signals, building materials, and even urgent warnings when the body is in danger. So the blood flow pushed out by the human heart is not merely a red river. It is a transport network for information, energy, and biological hope. The brain is one of the clearest examples of how deeply the body depends on the human heart. The brain makes up only a small portion of the body's weight, yet it consumes an enormous amount of oxygen and energy relative to its size. It cannot tolerate oxygen deprivation for long. Just a few minutes of severely interrupted blood flow can cause major brain injury. That means with every beat, the human heart is quietly serving our memory, language, emotions, dreams, and awareness. When you think, when you read, when you remember an old face, all of it depends on a stable circulatory foundation. The human heart does not think in place of the brain, but it provides the condition that allows the brain to keep doing its work. There is something strange and beautiful in the fact that the most delicate human thoughts must rest upon quiet streams of blood delivered by the heart. The kidneys are another gentle example of that dependence. The kidneys receive a very large amount of blood compared with their size, because their job is to filter the blood, balance water and electrolytes, and help regulate blood pressure. If the human heart does not pump enough, the kidneys can sense the reduced blood flow and respond through endocrine mechanisms that retain salt, retain water, and constrict blood vessels in order to preserve circulatory pressure. This shows that the human heart and the kidneys do not work separately. They are in constant conversation. When the heart weakens, the kidneys are often affected. When the kidneys become severely diseased, the heart also has to bear extra strain. In the body, almost no organ truly lives alone. And the human heart is a clear reminder that the centre of life does not exist in some isolated place, but in the ability to connect many parts into one whole. The liver, the body's tireless chemical organ, also lives by the rhythm of the human heart. The liver receives blood from both the hepatic artery and the portal vein. It processes nutrients, stores glycogen, synthesizes many important proteins, removes toxins, and takes part in countless metabolic reactions. If circulation to the liver drops sharply, many processes begin to unravel. The muscles are the same way. When you walk, climb stairs, lift a box, or simply change position, your muscles need more blood so they can receive oxygen and nutrients. The human heart has to respond to that need almost immediately. The skin also depends on blood flow in order to preserve heat and regulate body temperature. The intestines need blood in order to digest and absorb. Even the feeling of cold fingertips on a winter evening is part of a story about how the human heart and the blood vessels distribute flow to the outer parts of the body. Every place receives its share, and the work of dividing that share is delicate. When we talk about the work of the human heart, it is easy to think only about whether blood is flowing or not. But in reality, a more important question is this: at what pressure is the blood flowing? That is where the idea of blood pressure enters the story. Blood pressure is the force blood exerts against the walls of the arteries when the human heart pumps blood out. Blood pressure is usually described with two values. The higher value reflects the pressure in the arteries when the ventricles contract forcefully to eject blood. The lower value reflects the pressure when the heart relaxes between beats. Blood pressure is not just a number read in a clinic. It reflects the relationship between the pumping force of the human heart, the volume of blood in circulation, the elasticity of the vessel walls, and the degree of narrowing or widening in the small arteries. When blood pressure is too low, tissues may not be supplied adequately. When blood pressure stays too high for too long, the vessel walls and the human heart itself may be forced to carry chronic strain. One fascinating thing is that we can partly sense the work of the human heart at the wrist, the neck, or the top of the foot, not with our ears, but with our fingers. The pulse we feel is not a lump of blood racing beneath the skin. It is a pressure wave travelling along the arterial walls each time the human heart ejects blood. When the left ventricle contracts, it does not only push blood forward, it also creates an elastic change in the arterial wall. That wave moves faster than the blood itself, and can be felt at places where arteries lie close to the surface. So when you take a pulse at the wrist, you are really touching an echo of the human heart, a vibration that has travelled all the way from the chest to the hand. That feeling makes the work of the heart seem suddenly very near. With just 2 fingers placed in the right spot, we can meet our own rhythm in another form. Here, the difference between the right side and the left side of the human heart becomes very clear once again. The right side of the human heart only needs to create enough pressure to move blood to the lungs, where the blood vessels have much lower resistance than the arteries of the rest of the body. The left side is different. The left ventricle must push blood into a long and complex network of vessels reaching throughout the body. That requires significantly higher pressure. That is why the muscular wall of the left ventricle is thicker and stronger in a very literal mechanical sense. This is not just an anatomical detail, it is also the foundation for many disease processes. When high blood pressure continues for years, the left ventricle must work every day against greater resistance, and over time it can become thicker. When the pressure in the lung circulation rises, the right side of the human heart has to bear more of the burden. Both sides reflect one very basic truth. The human heart does not pump into empty space. It always pumps into a vascular system with its own conditions, and those conditions shape the work of the heart. If we watch one cardiac cycle carefully, we see that the human heart does not simply have a state of working and a state of not working. It has phases of contraction and phases of relaxation arranged with great precision. This matters because the human heart cannot function effectively if it only knows how to squeeze. When the heart relaxes, the chambers fill with blood again, preparing for the next beat. It rests through tiny moments of relaxation placed between beats. Thanks to those moments, its work does not become exhaustion. Perhaps this is one of the quietest lessons the human heart offers us. Endurance does not mean never letting go. Endurance means knowing how to alternate between effort and recovery in the right rhythm. Each time the left ventricle contracts under normal resting conditions, it usually pumps out about 2 1/3 fluid ounces of blood, which is about 70 milliliters, although that number changes depending on body size, fitness level, age, and many other factors. The amount of blood pumped out in one beat is called the stroke volume. When that number is multiplied by the heart rate over 1 minute, we get the cardiac output, which is the total amount of blood the human heart pumps in 1 minute. In a rest, that means when you sleep, metabolic demand falls, many tissues temporarily use less oxygen, and the human heart can work in a slower, gentler rhythm. When you wake up, stand out of bed, and take a few steps around the house, cardiac output changes slightly to adapt to posture and movement. When you walk, during intense exertion, cardiac output can increase dramatically compared with rest. In other words, the human heart does not send out the same amount of blood in every circumstance. It reads the situation, listens to the body's needs, and then changes the workload according to the moment. A staircase, a slope, a fever, a night of sleep, all of these can be reflected in the rhythm of the heart. When the body falls into acute stress, the distribution of blood flow also changes according to very clear priorities. If you are suddenly afraid, if the body must react quickly, or if there is blood loss, the sympathetic nervous system and many endocrine mechanisms cause some of the blood vessels in the outer parts of the body to narrow so that circulation to the heart and brain can be preserved. Blood is directed first toward the organs most essential for survival. The skin may grow cold, the hands may look paler, the digestive system may temporarily receive less blood. During intense exercise, blood is also redirected more heavily toward the working skeletal muscles. That is why after a large meal, exercising too hard can feel more uncomfortable, because the intestines and the muscles are both trying to claim priority at the same time. In situations like these, the human heart is not only pumping harder, it is taking part in a distribution strategy in which the body decides which places must be protected first. Blood loss is a very clear example showing that the human heart is the center of a complex response network. When circulating volume falls, the amount of blood returning to the heart also drops. Without compensation, cardiac output would fall quickly, blood pressure would collapse, and organs would be deprived of blood flow. But the body does not remain passive. The heart beats faster. Peripheral blood vessels narrow. Hormones such as adrenaline, noradrenaline, vasopressin, and the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system are mobilized in an effort to preserve pressure and retain water. These responses are not perfect, but they show that the human heart never fights alone. When danger arrives, the blood vessels, the nervous system, the kidneys, hormones, and the heart all join in a shared effort to protect the core of life. This is when we feel most deeply that the human heart is not a pump standing by itself, but the operating center of an entire community of organs. It is also worth saying that the speed of blood flow is not the same everywhere. blood moves faster in the large arteries, then slows down in the tiny capillary networks, where most of the exchange of oxygen, nutrients, and waste with the tissues takes place. Without that dense capillary network, the work of the human heart could never be completed. Pumping blood far away is only the first half of the story. The other half is allowing that blood to slow down enough in the right place so oxygen can leave the red blood cells, glucose can enter the cells, and carbon dioxide can be carried back. This reveals another gentle truth. The human heart is powerful where power is needed, but the entire system also knows how to slow down where slowing down is needed. The flow of life does not always need to be fast. It only needs to be in the right rhythm, in the right place for the right purpose. Perhaps one of the most moving realizations is that the human heart serves even the places we almost never remember. It sends blood to the retina so you can see the faint light of early morning. It nourishes the fingertips holding a warm cup of tea. It delivers oxygen to the breathing muscles lifting the chest up and down. It moves blood through the skin to help maintain body temperature. It nourishes the bone marrow, the mucous membranes, the nerves, and the hidden regions deep inside the body that we may never see even once in our lives. So every beat of the human heart carries a kind of quiet generosity. It does not choose more glamorous places to favour. It serves the whole land called the body, from the centre to the edges, from the organs most often mentioned in books to the tiny tissues that are almost nameless. The wider our view becomes, the harder it is to hold on to the idea that the human heart is simply an organ working all by itself. It needs the lungs to receive oxygen. It needs red blood cells to carry that oxygen. It needs blood vessels to create the roads. It needs the kidneys to help regulate volume and pressure. It needs the nervous system to adjust its rhythm according to circumstance. It needs the liver, the intestines, and the endocrine system to maintain the chemical environment of the blood. And in return, nearly all of those organs need the human heart in order to receive their share of blood. This is one of the most beautiful truths in physiology. Life in the body does not come from one solitary king. It comes from an alliance working in harmony. The human heart is extremely important, but its greatest value lies not in power, it lies in connection. If we listen a little longer, the beating in the chest no longer feels like a small sound. It becomes the opening note of a wave rushing to the brain to nourish thought, to the liver to preserve chemical balance, to the kidneys to filter and regulate, to the muscles to create movement, to the skin to keep warm, and to capillaries so delicate that the naked eye cannot even see them. Every beat of the human heart is not just a muscular contraction, it is a decision of distribution, a biological tide, a quiet reminder that within you there is a network far larger than surface sensation could ever suggest. And from here, the human heart appears more clearly than ever as a centre of flow, not as a lonely object resting silently in the middle of the chest, but precisely because the human heart is connected to such a living network, it cannot work the same way in every moment. When you lie still in the dark, when you breathe slowly and deeply, when you stand up and take a few steps, when you climb a staircase, or when a sudden fear passes through you in the night, the human heart changes again, as if it is listening not only to the body, but to the circumstances of every living second. And it is in the most ordinary moments that the human heart reveals a very gentle truth that we often forget. It does not change only when the body falls into major crisis, does not only race when we run, does not only grow tired when we are sick. It also adjusts with remarkable precision to things so small that almost no one notices them. Just the simple act of moving from lying down to sitting up, or from sitting to standing, is enough to make the human heart adapt immediately. When you're lying down, blood returns to the heart more easily because gravity is not pulling it down toward the legs as strongly as it does when you're standing. But when you get out of bed in the morning, gravity causes some of the blood to pool temporarily in the lower limbs. The amount of blood returning to the heart drops a little, and the human heart has to respond by slightly increasing its rate, together with help from the nervous system and the blood vessels, to keep blood pressure from falling too much. That is why some people feel a little lightheaded when they stand up too quickly, as if the whole body needs a few seconds to catch up with the change. In truth, during those brief seconds, the human heart is making a very real adjustment. When you're sitting quietly in a chair, the human heart lives in a different state again. It is not straining the way it does during prolonged standing, and it is not completely at ease the way it is when you're lying down. Even a small change in posture leads to changes in venous return, in the activity of pressure receptors in the carotid arteries and the aortic arch, and in the nerve signals sent back to the circulation control centres. From there, heart rate and vascular tone are adjusted continuously. Put gently, the human heart does not live inside one fixed number. It lives in an ongoing negotiation with posture, with gravity, and with the physical environment of the body. Even a quiet evening on the sofa is not a state of complete stillness. In that silence, the human heart is still reading your position minute by minute. When night falls and sleep begins to draw near, another story starts. The heart rate usually slows during sleep, especially in the deep stages of non-rapid eye movement sleep. This happens because when the body is truly resting, the metabolic demands of many tissues decrease, the parasympathetic nervous system gains more influence, blood pressure tends to fall lower than it is during the day, and the human heart no longer has to maintain the same level of alertness it does while awake. It does not stop working, but it works in a more economical way, like a rower entering calm water. That is why healthy sleep does not only help the mind feel clearer the next morning. It is also a precious stretch of time in which the human heart gets to live in a slower, steadier, and less strained rhythm. But sleep does not simply slow the heart rate down. Sleep also affects the way the entire cardiovascular system restores its balance after a long day. During the night, many people experience a natural drop in blood pressure as part of the body's circadian rhythm. Hormones related to stress become less dominant during the deeper stages of rest. The body shifts from a mode of reaction into a mode of conservation and recovery. If daytime is when human beings turn outward toward the world, then nighttime is often when the human heart is given back some of its quiet. That is exactly why long-lasting sleep disturbances can become a real burden on the cardiovascular system. When sleep is fragmented, too short or poor in quality, the body is almost like it never fully leaves its state of vigilance. Heart rate and blood pressure may not come down properly at night, and over time that can contribute to a greater risk of high blood pressure, metabolic disorders, coronary artery disease, and many other cardiovascular problems. Lack of sleep is one of the most modern hardships the human heart is being forced to endure. Many people stay up late because of work, because of screen light, because of anxiety, or because of nighttime habits the body was never designed to carry forever. Just a few nights of insufficient sleep can make the heart beat a little faster, can alter blood pressure, can disrupt the sense of hunger and fullness, and can make people more likely to reach for foods that are too sweet or too salty, move less, and slowly accumulate more harmful factors for the cardiovascular system. If that pattern continues for months or years, the human heart does not only lose the quiet stretches it needs, it also has to live in a less healthy, hormonal and nervous environment. In many cases, the human heart does not grow tired because of one rare burst of effort. It grows tired because of small deficits repeated again and again, and lack of sleep is one of the quietest yet deepest examples. Fortunately, the human heart also responds clearly to simple things that help the body feel safer. One of those things is breathing. When you breathe in slowly and deeply, then let the exhale last a little longer, the heart rate often changes along with it. In many healthy bodies, the heart rate becomes a little faster during inhalation and a little slower during exhalation. This reflects a delicate conversation between breathing, the autonomic nervous system, and the human heart. During deep breathing, especially when the breath is slow and steady, signals carried through the vagus nerve may increase, helping the human heart settle down. That is why slow breathing techniques, diaphragmatic breathing, or even simply sitting still and lengthening the exhale often create a feeling of calm not only in the mind, but also inside the chest. You may think you are only breathing, but in truth, you are also sending the human heart a message that the danger has, at least for now, moved farther away. That is why relaxation is not some vague idea. For the human heart, relaxation is a real physiological state. When the body is less tense, stress hormones ease, sympathetic tone becomes less dominant, blood vessels in some regions can soften and widen more easily, and heart rate has a chance to return to a quieter level. Not every anxious thought disappears after a few deep breaths, and relaxation should not be turned into a rigid command. But biologically speaking, the human heart truly does respond when the inner environment becomes less threatening. A slow piece of music, a room that is gently dark, a regular bedtime routine, soft light, a comfortable room temperature, even the feeling of a blanket that is warm enough against the skin, all of these things can indirectly help the human heart live under gentler conditions. Science does not always need dramatic change to make a difference. Sometimes a softly arranged evening is already a real gift for the heart. When the body shifts into movement, the human heart changes roles very quickly. Just a few brisk steps are enough to make the muscles consume more oxygen. The body recognizes that almost immediately. The heart rate rises, the force of contraction grows stronger, blood vessels in the active muscles widen, while areas that do not need priority in that moment may receive a little less blood. When you climb a staircase, it is not only your legs that are working. The human heart also moves into a faster rhythm to maintain blood flow to the lungs, the brain, the muscles, and the heart muscle itself. If you had been sitting quietly reading before that, the acceleration may make you feel your heart more clearly. But most of the time, that is a healthy, precise, and intelligent response. The human heart does not speed up to make you worry. It speeds up because the body needs more energy, and there is no more honest way to meet that need. What is interesting is that the human heart does not only respond to movement in the present moment, it also learns from movement repeated regularly over time. When a person walks often, rides a bike, swims, jogs lightly, or does strength training at an appropriate level for many months, the human heart can become more efficient. Stroke volume may increase. The heart may pump more blood with each beat at rest. The peripheral blood vessels may also adapt better. The sensitivity of the autonomic nervous system can change in a healthier direction. As a result, the same task that once made the heart beat very quickly may later be handled with much less effort. In other words, the human heart is not only an organ that endures the habits of life, it is an organ shaped by the habits of life. When it is given the chance to move in the right way, it learns how to become calmer and more enduring. In people who train for endurance over a long period of time, that adaptation can become very clear. Their resting heart rate is lower, their recovery after exertion is faster, and their ability to increase cardiac output when needed is better. That does not mean everyone needs to become an athlete in order to protect the human heart. Most evidence suggests that regular, moderate physical activity suited to age and health status is already enough for the cardiovascular system to benefit. A daily walk, a gentle habit of moving after dinner, a routine that avoids sitting for too long, things that sound quite modest are actually very meaningful. The human heart usually does not ask for heroic achievements. It responds to consistency. It values repeated signals that this body is still living, still moving, and still using its legs and lungs in the way they were naturally meant to be used. Still, a faster heart rate does not always come from exercise. Dehydration is a very practical example. When the body does not have enough water, circulating blood volume can drop somewhat, which reduces the amount of blood returning to the heart and raises the risk that blood pressure may fall. To compensate, the human heart often has to beat faster. That is why on hot days, after diarrhea, after repeated vomiting, or after working for a long time without drinking enough water, many people notice that their heart beats faster, their body feels more tired, and they become more lightheaded when standing up. The heart is not acting without reason. It is trying to maintain circulation in a system that is no longer as full as it was. Just a small change in the body's water balance is enough to make the human heart adjust its rhythm of living. That reminds us that the inner environment matters just as much as outward activity. Fever works in a similar way. When body temperature rises, metabolism usually rises with it. Oxygen demand increases, blood vessels in the skin may widen to help release heat, and the human heart often beats faster. Many people become worried when they notice their heart beating harder while they have a fever, but in many cases that is a fairly understandable physiological response. Of course, the degree of that increase depends on the cause of the fever, whether dehydration is also present, and whether there is underlying heart disease. But in general, fever makes the body busier, and the human heart has to speed up to keep pace. Once again, the heart responds not only to the movement of the legs or the work of the muscles, but also to the chemical and thermal atmosphere inside the body. Mental stress is also part of that inner environment, even though it does not show itself the way temperature or water balance does. A difficult conversation, a message that makes you nervous, an old memory returning unexpectedly in the night, all of these can change the rhythm of the human heart. The sympathetic nervous system becomes more active, Stress hormones are released, heart rate rises, the force of contraction becomes stronger, and sometimes you may even feel heat in the chest or a stronger pulse in the neck. The important thing is that the human heart does not make an especially clever distinction between the tiger in the forest that threatened our distant ancestors and the emotional threats of modern life. It responds to the feeling of danger the body believes is real. That is why a long day filled with worry can leave a mark on the heart even if you never ran a single step. The heart is not only an organ of movement, it is an organ of lived state. Because it lives among all those signals, the human heart is always changing from one hour to the next. In the morning just after waking, heart rate and blood pressure are often different from what they are at midnight. After a meal, especially a large one, circulation to the digestive system increases, and the body enters a different state from the one it has on an empty stomach. In a hot room, the heart may beat faster to help regulate temperature. In cold weather, the peripheral blood vessels narrow, and the pulse in the hands may feel different. When you laugh out loud, cry, sit in silence for a long time, or sit by a window watching the rain, the human heart may respond in subtle ways that you never even notice. Everyday life, then, is a wordless conversation between a person and the heart inside that person. Each hour, each small change in habit, in environment, in mood, sends the heart a new kind of question, and the heart answers with rhythm. Seen that way, the human heart does not work only in the major moments of life such as birth, severe illness, surgery, or intense exertion. It changes even in the smallest things, like a sip of cold water, a yawn, a step out of bed, a deep breath before sleep. Perhaps because it reacts so quietly, we do not give it the attention it deserves. We only notice it when it becomes too fast, too forceful, too painful, or too tired. But the more beautiful truth lies in the moments when nothing dramatic is happening. When you put the book down, turn off the light, lie on your side, pull the blanket up, and close your eyes, the human heart is going into the night with you in its own way. It slows down when it can, stays steady when it needs to, and adapts to posture, to breathing, to temperature, and to the quiet gradually opening in the room. It is in those deeply ordinary moments that we can understand one more essential truth. The human heart is not a cold machine that responds only to weight and distance. It lives inside a body that knows how to sleep, grow tired, exert effort, recover, feel thirsty, feel hot, feel anxious, and breathe. It is part of life, not something standing outside life. That is why the way we live each day truly leaves traces on the human heart, not only over many years, but from one hour to the next. A steady daily rhythm, enough sleep, moderate movement, enough water, and real moments of relaxation are not just beautiful advice. They are conditions that help the heart avoid living in a constant state of response. And then, once we have seen how the human heart responds to posture, sleep, breathing, movement, and stress, we begin to move closer to a question that almost every culture has believed matters deeply. Why have human beings always felt that the heart is connected to emotion? Modern science does not tell that story only through symbols or poetry, but the more carefully we understand it, the more we see that the relationship between the human heart and what we feel is far more subtle than we first imagined. And perhaps this is where we touch one of humanity's most beautiful misunderstandings. For thousands of years, people have spoken of the human heart as the home of love, sorrow, courage, and the deepest hidden places of the soul. Modern science knows very well that the human heart does not think the way the brain thinks, does not create memory, does not form language, and is not where emotions are stored in any anatomical sense. But what makes this story so interesting is that people were not entirely wrong to feel that emotion is connected to the human heart. Because every powerful emotion truly leaves a clear physiological mark on heart rate, the strength of contraction, the blood vessels, breathing, and the sensations inside the chest. In other words, people do not love with the heart in a literal sense, but almost no deep emotion passes through us without the human heart knowing about it. When you suddenly hear a loud sound in the middle of the night, when you are waiting for an important call, or when someone brings up an old memory you are not ready to face, the human heart often reacts almost immediately. The heart rate rises, the breath becomes shorter, the palms may feel unusually warm or cold, A very familiar feeling appears in the chest, as if the human heart has suddenly stepped out of its usual quiet background and made itself more noticeable. This is not because the heart feels fear in a conscious way, but because fear, nervousness, or vigilance are interpreted by the brain as situations that require readiness for action. From there, the sympathetic nervous system is activated, and the human heart becomes one of the first places where that change is expressed as rhythm. The role of adrenaline in this story is almost like that of an urgent messenger. When the body senses danger or stress, the adrenal glands can release adrenaline and noradrenaline into the bloodstream. These substances bind to receptors in the heart and blood vessels, causing the sinoatrial node to fire faster, the heart muscle to contract more strongly, and the human heart to send more blood to the organs being prioritized, such as the brain, the heart itself, and the muscles. This mechanism has enormous evolutionary value. For distant ancestors, it may have helped them run faster, react more quickly, and survive more effectively. But in modern life, that same system can be set off by very different threats, like a tense meeting, an unpaid bill, sudden bad news, or even thoughts looping through the mind at midnight. The human heart does not perfectly distinguish between physical danger and emotional danger. It reacts to whatever the whole body believes is urgent. That is also why nervous anticipation is such a real experience. It is not just a thought in the mind, but a physiological state spreading through the whole body. When emotion rises, the sympathetic nervous system causes the human heart to beat faster. While blood vessels in some regions narrow, the airways may open wider, and blood sugar may shift to prepare energy for use. If you have ever felt your heart race before stepping onto a stage, before speaking in public, or before meeting someone important, that does not mean your body is failing. It may simply be doing exactly what biology prepared it to do a very long time ago. In truth, in many situations, it is precisely because the human heart reacts so quickly that the moment feels more alive to us. Waiting feels more real when the heart starts pounding. Unexpected joy becomes more tangible when the rhythm in the chest suddenly grows lively. But the story does not move in only one direction. If the sympathetic nervous system makes the human heart more urgent when the body needs to respond, then the parasympathetic nervous system is like a gentle hand that slows that rhythm when the body no longer has to fight. The vagus nerve is a very important part of this mechanism. When you breathe slowly, when you feel safe, when you truly relax, parasympathetic influence increases and the heart rate comes down, helping the human heart shift into a more economical state. This is especially easy to notice after a surge of nervousness has passed. At first, the heart is racing, the pulse is strong, the breath is shallow. Then gradually, as the brain recognizes that the threat is gone, the heart rate settles. That moment matters because it shows that the human heart does not only respond to danger, it also responds to reassurance. Calm is not a vague idea. For the heart, it is a real biological state. Anxiety is where the connection between the brain and the human heart becomes so visible that many people can become frightened by their own bodies. In anxiety, not only can the heart rate rise, but the brain's attention to internal bodily signals also increases. A person under stress may begin to hear the heartbeat more clearly, feel every thump in the chest, in the neck, or even in the ears when lying on a pillow. That does not necessarily mean the human heart is doing anything more dangerous than normal. Sometimes the bigger change lies in the fact that the brain is amplifying the signals coming in. The awareness of the heart, sometimes called interoception, is a normal function. The brain is always receiving signals from the heart, the lungs, the gut, and the blood vessels. But when anxiety rises, the brain can become more sensitive to those signals, as if it is examining every small change too closely. So a person may be experiencing both a real physiological change in the human heart and a subjective amplification in the way the brain interprets that change. That is why the exact same heartbeat can feel completely different to two different people. One person may barely notice the heart after climbing a few stairs. Another may feel intense worry simply because they can hear the heartbeat clearly for a few quiet seconds. In both situations, the human heart may be functioning in almost the same way, but the brain places each one into a different story. One mind sees it as normal, the other sees it as a sign of danger. And when the brain chooses the second interpretation, the sympathetic nervous system becomes even easier to activate, which makes the heart beat faster, which then increases the fear. A loop can form in that way. where the human heart and the fear of the heart begin feeding each other. Understanding that loop is important because it helps people become less terrified by changes that are not necessarily dangerous, while still staying aware enough to recognize when a real medical evaluation is needed. The feeling of a heavy chest from sadness is another example worth thinking about. In everyday life, we often say that sorrow makes the heart hurt. In language, that is a metaphor. But physiologically, it is not entirely just a metaphor. Deep sadness, major loss, or a severe emotional shock can cause feelings of chest heaviness, tightness, shortness of breath, abnormal heartbeats, loss of appetite, and restless sleep. Some of those sensations come from the autonomic nervous system, from stress hormones, from changes in breathing, from tension in the chest wall muscles, and from increased attention to the body. In rare but very real cases, an intense emotional event can even be linked to a temporary cardiovascular condition called stress-induced cardiomyopathy, sometimes known by the everyday name broken heart syndrome. In this condition, the human heart, especially the left ventricle, can weaken temporarily after a strong emotional or physical stress. Most patients can recover, but the very existence of this phenomenon reminds us that emotion and cardiovascular function are not just poetry. There is a real biological bridge between them. Long-term stress leaves much deeper marks than a brief spell of nervousness. When the body lives in a prolonged state of alert, stress hormone levels may shift in unhealthy ways, blood pressure may run higher, sleep may become poorer, low-grade chronic inflammation may increase, and defensive habits such as imbalanced eating, low activity, heavy drinking, or smoking may become more likely. All of those things can force the human heart to live in a heavier biological climate. Chronic stress is not a single arrow shot directly into the heart in some simple way. It is more like bad weather that lasts too long, quietly wearing down the blood vessels, the sleep rhythm, metabolism, and the body's ability to recover. The human heart, then, is not harmed only by what is sudden and dramatic. It can also grow tired from small pressures the body has had to carry for far too long. So why has almost every culture used the human heart as a symbol of emotion, even though its primary function is biological? Perhaps because the heart is the organ people can feel most easily when emotion changes. We cannot directly feel the liver increasing metabolism or an endocrine gland releasing hormones. But we can feel the human heart race when we worry, pound when we are moved, grow heavy when we are exhausted, or soften when we feel at peace. Long before microscopes, electrocardiograms, or modern physiology, people placed a hand on the chest and recognized that inner changes in the emotional life were often accompanied by changes here. That is why the human heart became a symbol not only because poetry wanted it to, but because the body offered poetry direct sensory evidence. We do not think with the heart, but we often feel our mood through it. The brain is the one that gives meaning to those sensations. Many brain regions take part in monitoring the state of the body, especially those related to interoception, attention, and emotion. The brain receives signals from the heart through nerve pathways and through information about blood pressure, blood chemistry, and breathing, then fits those signals into the context of memory, expectation, and present state. The same rapid heartbeat can be interpreted by the brain as excitement if you're hearing good news, or as panic if you're in an unsafe situation. That means the human heart does not create emotional experience on its own. It provides signals. The brain gives those signals a name. And when the brain changes the meaning, the subjective experience changes too. This is one of the deepest truths in human biology. We do not live only through what the body produces. We also live through the story the brain tells about what the body produces. Hearing sometimes the human heart really is beating faster after a cup of coffee, after a worry, or after a day with too much stimulation. Sometimes the heart is still close to normal, but the brain, in a state of vigilance, makes each beat feel larger in your experience. Not every sensation means disease, but not every sensation should be dismissed completely either. The balance in between is what matters. The human heart speaks in rhythm. The brain listens through attention, and human experience happens where those two meet. Emotion, hormones, heart rhythm, and sleep are also tied together more closely than we usually realize. A stressful day can make the evening harder for sleep. When sleep is poor, the sympathetic nervous system may become more active the next day. Emotional regulation may weaken. A person may become more sensitive to anxiety, and the human heart may become more noticeable in an uncomfortable way. On the other hand, stretches of adequate sleep, A steady routine and less stimulation late at night can help keep the nervous system from being pushed too high, which in turn can help the heart stay steadier. This means the relationship between emotion and the human heart is not a straight line, but a circle. Mood affects sleep. Sleep affects the nervous system. The nervous system affects heart rhythm. Heart rhythm and the awareness of heart rhythm then affect mood again. Everything is linked in soft loops that are quiet but very real. That may be why true calm can help the human heart work more gently. Not because calm has magical power to erase all illness, and not because positive thinking alone can always keep the heart healthy. That would be far too simple and unfair to people living with real disease. But at the level of normal physiology, the feeling of safety, rest, reassurance, deep breathing, and living in a steady rhythm can reduce sympathetic strain and allow the human heart to function in a more comfortable internal climate. A gentle way of living cannot replace medicine when disease is already present, but it can become good ground in which the human heart does not have to live in a constant state of battle. And when we say that, we return to an important truth. The human heart does not think, love, or grieve in the psychological sense, but it reflects very clearly the way the body is living and feeling. If you live in prolonged anxiety, the human heart usually knows it. If you live in a steady routine, the human heart usually knows that too. If you are grieving, longing, waiting, or feeling at peace, those states do not remain only in the mind. They pass through hormones, through the nervous system, through breathing, through sleep, and then leave more or less of a mark on heart rhythm. So perhaps the most beautiful way to say it is this: the human heart is not the author of emotion, but it is the most honest biological mirror of many powerful emotions. Once we see the human heart in that light, we begin to understand that it is not only the pump of blood inside the chest, and not only the symbol poetry loves. It is the place where biology and lived experience meet. It is the place where the precise mechanisms of hormones and nerves can become a deeply human feeling, like nervous anticipation, relief, heartbreak, or peace. And perhaps it is exactly at that meeting point that the human heart becomes more familiar than ever. Not mythical, but not cold. Not capable of thought, but capable of response. Not the creator of love, but always present whenever love, fear, joy, or loss pass through the body. And then, over the years, that human heart no longer remains exactly the way it was in the beginning. It grows older with us, adapts with us, and sometimes carries within itself the very real marks of time, of lived habits, and of the way an entire life has been passed through. And truly, if we look long enough, the human heart does not only tell us how the body works through a single day or night, it tells a much longer story, the story of time itself. The human heart does not stay the same throughout an entire lifetime. It changes from the very rapid rhythm of a newborn baby to the relative steadiness of adulthood, and then gradually begins to carry the marks of passing years, of work, of sleep, of eating habits, of worry, of movement, of the things that were cared for and the things that were neglected. So when we look at the human heart, sometimes we are not looking at just one organ. We are looking at the way a life has been lived. In newborn babies, the human heart beats much faster than it does in adults. That is normal, because that tiny body is living at a higher metabolic pace, needing more energy for each unit of body mass, and the cardiovascular system is still continuing its adjustment to life outside the womb. A baby can have a resting heart rate that is much higher than what would be considered fast in an adult. As a child grows, the human heart grows too. The walls of the heart become stronger, the blood vessels continue developing, and the average heart rate tends to slow down little by little. In young children and teenagers, the heart is still usually faster than it is in adults. But the change reflects a body that is growing, learning how to balance development, movement, and rest. By adulthood, the human heart enters a stage many people call stable, but that stability does not mean it never changes. This is the season when the heart must adapt to work, to daily rhythm, to mental labour or physical labour, and to the long pressures of modern life. A person who has done physical work for many years may carry one kind of adaptation, while someone who spends long hours seated at a desk may carry another. A person who keeps moving regularly gives the human heart a very different environment from someone who rarely exercises, stays up late often, and lives with ongoing stress. In this stage, the heart can seem the quietest, because many people still feel healthy enough not to notice the accumulated effects clearly, but adulthood is exactly when many important turning points begin to be written. What we eat regularly, how we sleep, how we respond to stress, how much we move, and how much tobacco or alcohol travels with us through the years, all of it is quietly negotiating with the human heart about its future. As age increases, the aging process begins leaving marks on the human heart and on the blood vessels the heart must work with. The walls of the blood vessels, especially the large arteries, can gradually lose some of their natural elasticity. When those vessel walls become stiffer, each contraction of the left ventricle has to face a system that is less gentle in the way it receives blood. In many people, systolic blood pressure tends to rise with age for that very reason. The human heart does not grow old in isolation. It grows old in relationship with the blood vessels, the kidneys, the lungs, the nervous system, and the living conditions of the whole body. So cardiovascular aging is not only the story of the heart itself, it is the story of the entire network the human heart has to serve every single day. One noticeable change that comes with time is that the left ventricle may become somewhat stiffer, and its ability to relax and receive blood may no longer feel as effortless as it once did. Many older adults still keep a fairly good pumping force overall, but the relaxation phase of the human heart can change over the years. That can make the heart more sensitive to long-standing high blood pressure, to fast heart rhythms, to excess fluid in the body, or to other medical conditions that come along with age. The electrical conduction system of the human heart can also carry the marks of time. Some of the cells responsible for pacing and conduction may no longer work with the same flexibility they had in youth, and because of that, rhythm disorders or disease-related slow heart rhythms may become more common in older age. Not everyone who grows older will develop a clear heart problem, but time can absolutely make it harder for the human heart to keep the original softness it once had. Genetics also plays a part in how the human heart moves through the years. Every person carries a genetic background that can increase or decrease the risk of certain cardiovascular problems. Some families have very high cholesterol across several generations because of inherited conditions. Some people are more likely to develop high blood pressure or to develop coronary artery disease earlier than average. Some heart muscle diseases, valve diseases, rhythm disorders, or blood vessel abnormalities clearly carry a family pattern. That does not mean the fate of the human heart is fully decided from birth, but it does mean that people do not all begin from the same starting point. Some are given a more favourable genetic foundation, others need to be more careful much earlier. Genetics is the opening paragraph already written at the start of the story, but lifestyle and environment are the chapters that life continues writing into the human heart afterward. Biological differences between men and women make the story even more subtle. For many years, medicine tended to look at cardiovascular disease through a lens that leaned toward how it appears in men, but in reality, the human heart in women and men can show important differences in risk, in the age when disease appears, and even in the way symptoms are expressed. Before menopause, estrogen often provides some beneficial effects on blood vessels and metabolism, which means women at that stage of life generally have a lower average risk of coronary artery disease than men of the same age. However, after menopause, that gap gradually becomes smaller. Women can also experience a heart attack with less typical symptoms, such as extreme fatigue, shortness of breath, nausea, pain in the upper back, or pain in the jaw, instead of the dramatic crushing chest pain many people still assume must always be present. That reminds us that the human heart differs from one person to another, not only because of lifestyle, but also because of the body's own biological sex and hormonal foundation. Then comes middle age, a very special period for the human heart. This is often when the small accumulations from many years earlier begin to matter more clearly. High blood pressure may no longer be just a number that showed up once or twice at a visit. High cholesterol may no longer live only on a lab report, but may already be affecting the vessel walls. Excess weight, low activity, insulin resistance, diabetes, smoking, heavy drinking, poor sleep, and chronic stress may begin to gather together in one place. Many people still feel no clear symptoms at this stage, so it is easy to think the human heart is still doing fine. But this is exactly where prevention becomes more precious than ever. So many cardiovascular diseases do not appear in one single day. They are built in very thin, very small layers over such a long time that we forget each day has been leaving its own mark on the heart. Diet is an important part of that story. A diet that contains too much salt can help keep blood pressure high, A diet with too much energy for too long can lead to excess weight, obesity, unhealthy blood fat levels, and diabetes, all of which increase the burden on the human heart. Saturated fats and trans fats, if they are present in the diet in high amounts over many years, can worsen the blood lipid profile and promote the process of atherosclerosis. On the other hand, a way of eating rich in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, appropriate amounts of protein, healthy unsaturated fats, and a well-controlled amount of salt can create a more favourable foundation for the cardiovascular system. No single meal decides the fate of the human heart on its own, but the pattern of eating repeated over many years absolutely can. The heart does not remember last night's dinner. The heart remembers the kind of life carried through thousands of dinners. Tobacco is one of the clearest examples of how a habit can change the history of the human heart. Cigarette smoke contains many substances that damage the lining of blood vessels, increase inflammation, promote atherosclerosis, and increase the tendency for blood vessels to tighten and blood clots to form. Smoking also raises heart rate and blood pressure in the short term, forcing the heart to work in a harsher environment. And it is not only active smokers who pay the price. People who are exposed regularly to secondhand smoke also pay part of that cost with their cardiovascular health. Alcohol is similar, although the story of alcohol is more complicated. Low to moderate use in some settings has been debated for years, but heavy long-term use can clearly harm the human heart through high blood pressure, rhythm disorders, alcohol-related heart muscle disease, metabolic problems, and a higher risk of stroke. In the world of cardiovascular health, what happens every day usually matters more than what happens once. Movement works in the opposite direction. Regular physical activity is one of the most enduring gifts we can give the human heart. It helps with weight control, improves insulin sensitivity, makes blood fat levels healthier, supports lower blood pressure, improves heart and lung fitness, and helps the lining of the blood vessels work better. More importantly, steady movement reminds the body of a very basic truth, that the human heart was made to live alongside motion, not to spend its whole existence in chairs and screen light. Daily walks, gentle bike rides, easy swims, moderate strength exercises, none of these things are dramatic, but they can change the heart's direction over many years. Cardiovascular health is rarely built through spectacular acts. It is usually built through steady ones. Body weight also carries part of the story. When the body remains too large for too long, the human heart has to pump blood for a greater amount of tissue, while metabolic strain, insulin resistance, high blood pressure, and chronic inflammation may also increase. That does not mean every number on a scale fully reflects cardiovascular health, and people should never be reduced to the shape of their bodies. But at the physiological level, long-lasting excess weight and obesity can clearly make the work of the heart heavier. The human heart usually carries strain not because of appearance, but because of the metabolic and circulatory consequences that come with too much weight over time. When people enter old age, many assume the human heart simply becomes weaker. That view is partly true, but also not entirely fair. The heart of an older person is not only weaker. Very often it is adapting to a very long life history. It has lived through decades of one blood pressure or another, many styles of eating, many levels of movement, many seasons of poor sleep, many recoveries after illness, many hormonal changes, many joys, and no small amount of stress. So the human heart in old age is like a book that has already been turned through many chapters. Some hearts grow old and still remain resilient because life treated them fairly well. Some hearts grow old in fatigue because they had to hold up against too many harmful influences for too long. And some hearts that appear fragile are still much more enduring than we imagine. That is what makes looking at the heart in older adults something that requires gentleness. We should not ask only whether the heart is strong or weak. We should ask what that human heart has already lived through. There are many early warning signs that people often ignore until they become more obvious. Shortness of breath with lighter effort than before, the feeling of being breathless when lying down, swelling in the legs by evening, repeated episodes of irregular heartbeat, chest pain or heaviness while walking that improves with rest, dizziness, fainting, unusual fatigue, reduced exercise, tolerance or palpitations that are becoming more frequent. All of these can be the first quiet whispers from the human heart. They do not always signal severe disease, but they should not be dismissed just because they arrive slowly and without drama. The body rarely sends signals like fireworks. Very often, the human heart is only softly suggesting that something is beginning to change. The real question is whether we are still calm enough to listen. Because so many cardiovascular diseases progress in silence like that, prevention is almost always more valuable than late intervention. When atherosclerosis has already caused a heart attack, when high blood pressure has already thickened the heart, or when diabetes has already worn down blood vessels over many years, medicine can still help a great deal, but it can rarely return everything completely to the way it was before. The human heart has an astonishing ability to adapt and recover, but it is not an endless blank page that we can keep rewriting from the beginning forever. Controlling blood pressure, blood sugar and blood fat levels, quitting smoking, getting enough sleep, moving regularly, eating sensibly, managing stress, and keeping up with routine health checks, all of these things sound so familiar that people often underestimate them. Yet in cardiovascular health, the familiar things are often the ones that save the most lives. The health of the human heart is, in that sense, a story of accumulation. It is not decided by one perfect day or one careless week. It is shaped by the direction of many years. A person may have once lived with very poor habits, then change in middle age and still bring real benefit to the heart. Another person may assume they are still healthy and delay all attention until symptoms appear. The human heart does not judge the past, but it does remember the total weight of the past. Each day seems small, but many years are not small at all. That is both frightening and comforting. It is frightening because quiet, unhealthy habits can accumulate into disease. It is comforting because good changes, even modest ones, can also accumulate into a reserve of peace for the heart. That may be why an experienced cardiologist can sometimes begin to imagine part of a person's heart history just by seeing the whole person in front of them. They do not look only at an electrocardiogram or an echocardiogram. They ask about sleep, about work, about how far that person walks each day, about family history, about tobacco, about blood pressure, about episodes of palpitations, about late-night meals, about the long years of worry. Because the human heart does not live separately from the biography of the person who carries it. It holds the marks of genetics, of environment, of habit, of age, and of choice. Sometimes when we look at the heart, we are seeing not only physiology, but part of a person's human story. And once we understand that, the story of the human heart becomes deeper than simply disease or health. It becomes a reminder that the body stores time in very physical ways. Years of living kindly with yourself may appear in a heart carrying less burden. Years of wearing yourself down may appear in stiffer blood vessels, in blood pressure that is harder to manage, or in shorter breath when climbing a hill. Sometimes, when we look at the human heart, we really are looking at how a life has been lived, not to judge, but to understand. Not to regret, but to become gentler with the life that remains. And then, at the very moment when the human heart begins to reveal its troubles, when the valves are no longer as tight as before, when the coronary arteries slowly narrow, when the electrical rhythm slips away from its old track, when the heart muscle grows tired after too many years, modern science steps into a different journey. It becomes a journey not only of observing or explaining, but of finding ways to heal the organ that for so long human beings have seen as the quiet center of life. And it is precisely in the place that seems most fragile that humanity has entered one of the bravest journeys in science. Because the more deeply we understand the human heart, the more clearly we see that it is not only the organ that keeps blood moving, but also a very thin boundary between stability and collapse. Just one small blood vessel blocked, just one valve no longer closing tightly, just one electrical signal straying from its familiar path, and the whole body can feel the consequences at once. But it is also from that very fragility that modern medicine has learned how to listen, intervene, repair, replace, support, and in many cases pull people back from the very edge. The human heart is fragile, but the story of human beings saving their own hearts is also one of the most beautiful stories science has ever written. One of the most frequently discussed conditions is coronary artery disease. This is the condition in which the coronary arteries, the blood vessels that feed the heart muscle itself, gradually become narrowed because of atherosclerosis. Over time, cholesterol, inflammatory cells, fibrous tissue, and other substances can build up in the vessel wall and form plaque. At first, this process is usually silent. The human heart is still beating, people are still going to work, still eating dinner, still having conversations as usual, but inside the vessel, the space for blood flow has already begun to narrow. When the heart muscle needs more oxygen, such as during exertion, stress, or strong emotion, blood flow may no longer be enough to meet that demand. That is when a person may feel chest pain, pressure, heaviness, or discomfort in the middle of the chest, sometimes spreading to the neck, down the arm, or into the back. That pain is a reminder that the human heart does not grow tired only because of age. It may be slowly getting squeezed by its own blood supply. A heart attack, or more precisely a myocardial infarction, usually happens when a plaque inside a coronary artery cracks or ruptures. When that happens, the body reacts as if there is a wound and forms a blood clot at the site. But inside a coronary artery, that clot can seriously block or completely block the blood flow. The part of the heart muscle beyond the blockage is suddenly deprived of oxygen. If that continues, the heart muscle cells can die. That is when a heart attack is truly happening. Many people imagine that a myocardial infarction means the human heart immediately stops beating, but those two things are not the same. An infarction is damage to the heart muscle caused by a lack of blood supply. The heart may still be beating, but it is beating in a dangerous situation. Some people feel crushing chest pain, break out in a sweat, feel nauseated or become short of breath. But others, especially older adults, women or people with diabetes, may only feel exhausted, vaguely unwell, or feel pain in an unusual place. That very inconsistency is why the human heart sometimes sends very loud signals and sometimes only whispers. Heart failure is another concept that is often misunderstood. Many people hear the words heart failure and imagine that the human heart is about to stop beating right away. But heart failure does not mean the heart instantly stops. Heart failure is a condition in which the heart can no longer pump enough blood to meet the needs of the body, or can do so only by working under abnormal pressure. Some people develop heart failure because the heart muscle has weakened after a heart attack. Others develop it because long-term high blood pressure causes the heart to thicken and then stiffen. Others may develop it because of valve disease, heart muscle disease, rhythm disorders, or many other causes. When heart failure appears, a person may become short of breath with exertion, feel tired, develop swelling in the legs, wake up at night gasping for air, or realize they can no longer do things that once felt routine. At that point, the human heart has not necessarily stopped, but it is saying that its ability to serve the rest of the body has begun to fall short. This is one of the truths that makes people most humble. A heart that is still beating may no longer be strong enough to carry life the way it once did. Dangerous arrhythmias are another face of that fragility. Some fast ventricular rhythms or ventricular fibrillation can cause the human heart to lose its ability to pump blood effectively in only a few seconds. When that happens, even though the heart may still have chaotic electrical activity, useful circulation can almost disappear, and the person may faint or go into cardiac arrest. This is where the idea of sudden cardiac arrest becomes clearest. Cardiac arrest does not necessarily begin with the heart becoming completely still. Sometimes it begins with an electrical rhythm so chaotic that it can no longer produce a meaningful contraction. That is why early defibrillation can save a life in some cases. When an external electric shock is delivered across the heart by a defibrillator, the goal is to stop the chaotic electrical activity so that the natural pacemaker has a chance to restore order. A well-timed electrical shock is not just a movie scene. It is a very real effort to give the human heart back a rhythm that means something. To understand where the human heart is having trouble, medicine needs many different ways of looking at it. An electrocardiogram is one of the simplest but most important tools. It records the electrical activity of the heart through electrodes placed on the skin, allowing doctors to see the heart rhythm, the conduction pattern, signs of acute lack of blood supply to the heart muscle, signs of an old heart attack, or certain other electrical abnormalities. An echocardiogram tells a different story. It shows us the structure of the human heart, the size of the chambers, the thickness of the walls, the pumping function, the condition of the valves, estimated pressures in some chambers, and many details that cannot be seen on an electrocardiogram. Blood tests also play a major role. Certain markers, such as troponin, can rise when the heart muscle is injured. Blood fats, blood sugar, kidney function, electrolytes, thyroid hormones, and many other measurements also help place a heart problem into the proper context of the whole body. This reminds us that the human heart cannot be fully understood through a quick listen with a stethoscope alone. Sometimes, to truly hear the heart, medicine has to listen at the same time to its electricity, its shape, and the chemical traces it leaves behind in the blood. When a coronary artery becomes significantly narrowed or blocked, a coronary intervention can create a new path for blood flow. A stent is a small metal scaffold that is usually guided into the vessel through a catheter and then expanded at the narrowed area to help keep the vessel more open. For many patients, this procedure can reduce chest pain, improve blood flow to the heart muscle, and, in the setting of an acute heart attack, reopening the artery early can save part of the heart muscle that is standing at the edge of death. But not every case is suitable for a stent. When the coronary disease is too complex, too long, involves many major branches, or exists in certain special situations such as severe diabetes with widespread disease, coronary artery bypass surgery may be the better choice. In that operation, the surgeon uses a segment of blood vessel from another place, such as a vein from the leg or an internal chest artery, to create a new path around the blocked area. In that way, science does not erase the history of injury inside the human heart, but it creates another road so the heart can keep being nourished. Open heart surgery is one of the achievements that changed the history of medicine more deeply than almost anything else. Before there was heart-lung bypass and before surgical techniques developed, many injuries inside the human heart were almost beyond repair. When human beings learned how to temporarily take over circulation and gas exchange with a heart-lung machine while the heart was opened, an entirely new world appeared. From repairing heart valves, replacing heart valves, closing congenital heart defects, performing coronary bypass surgery, to many even more complex procedures, heart surgery turned things once thought impossible into things that became possible. It is hard not to be moved by that image. An organ that has worked quietly through an entire lifetime is suddenly surrounded, supported and repaired under the lights of an operating room by a whole team of people. That is one of the moments when humanity touches the human heart in both the literal and the symbolic sense. Sometimes what is needed is not fixing a blood vessel or replacing a valve, but protecting the rhythm of life from electrical disorder. A pacemaker, as mentioned earlier, replaces the missing electrical signal when the heart beats too slowly because of pacing or conduction problems. An implantable cardioverter defibrillator serves a different purpose. This device continuously monitors the heart rhythm and can detect dangerous ventricular tachycardia or ventricular fibrillation. If it detects a life-threatening rhythm, it can deliver an electrical impulse to stop the arrhythmia and save the patient from sudden cardiac arrest. In a very beautiful sense, these devices do not replace the human heart the way one machine replaces another. They stand beside the heart like a watchful guard, stepping in only when the rhythm of life strays too far from safety. Modern science, then, does not only repair what is broken. Sometimes it learns how to stay close, keep watch, and catch the human heart at exactly the moment it is most in danger. Then there is another summit of medicine, where fragility and hope almost touch each other directly, and that is heart transplantation. When the human heart has failed to the point that medicines, assist devices, or other interventions can no longer provide enough help, a heart transplant can become the last or best chance for survival in some carefully selected patients. The idea that a heart from one human being can continue beating inside another chest once left the whole world in awe, and even today it remains one of the deepest achievements of modern medicine. But heart transplantation is not only an operation. It is the meeting point of surgery, immunology, intensive care, medical ethics, donation after death, and a kind of gratitude so large it is sometimes hard to name. In that situation, the human heart is no longer a sealed object belonging to just one individual. It becomes a bridge between two destinies. At the same time, heart transplantation is both a miracle and a very real battle with the immune system. The body that receives the transplant was born to recognize what belongs to itself and what does not. When a new heart is placed inside, the immune system may see it as foreign and attack it. That is why people who receive heart transplants need long-term immunosuppressive medicine to reduce the risk of rejection. But when the immune system is quieted, people must also accept certain trade-offs, such as a higher risk of infection or other complications. A heart transplant, then, is not a perfect ending where everything returns to life as if in a fairy tale. It is a great opportunity, an open door, but one that comes with treatment discipline, close follow-up, and steady cooperation between the patient and medicine. Even here, the human heart teaches us something. Life is prolonged not only by the great moment in the operating room, but by many ordinary days afterward lived with care. Beyond transplantation, medicine also has circulatory support devices such as ventricular assist pumps for some patients with severe heart failure. These devices help the human heart pump blood more effectively when the heart muscle itself has become too weak. They can serve as a bridge while someone waits for a transplant, or as long-term support in some cases. Solutions like these show that science today no longer has only two choices, either curing completely or standing helplessly by. Between those two extremes, there are many levels of support. There are times when we cannot return the human heart to its original condition, but we can still help it extend the rhythm of life, reduce shortness of breath, increase the ability to walk, help someone spend more time with family, gain another spring, or enjoy a few more ordinary afternoons that once seemed lost. Whether it is a heart attack, valve surgery, stent placement, pacemaker implantation, or a heart transplant, recovery has never been the story of just one organ. After a cardiovascular event, many people do not carry only a scar in the chest or a new set of medicines. They also carry the fear of whether their human heart can still be trusted the way it once was. They may become afraid of climbing stairs, afraid of hearing the heartbeat hard, afraid the pain will return in the middle of the night, afraid they have lost the natural ease of daily life they once knew. That is why cardiac rehabilitation matters so much. It does not only help the body safely regain physical ability, it also helps people learn how to trust their own rhythm of life again. Guided exercise, medication adjustment, nutrition counseling, psychological support, education about symptoms and lifestyle, all of these things contribute to healing. After a crisis, the human heart does not only need to be saved, it needs to be accompanied back into life. Perhaps the deepest truth here is that science does not make the human heart immortal. No technique can turn the heart into something that cannot be injured. No surgery erases the fact that the human body is finite. But science can do something profoundly meaningful. It can extend the chance to live, improve the quality of life, reduce pain, lower risk, open more time, and in many cases return years that otherwise might have been lost. A person who once could not walk across a room because of heart failure may be able to stroll again. A person who has just survived a heart attack may return home, hold their family and live for many more years with good treatment. A child born with a congenital heart defect may grow up, go to school, work, and love because of what medicine has learned. That is not an absolute victory over death, but it is a very great human victory over helplessness. The more we understand the human heart, the more clearly we see a gentle paradox. This is an organ strong enough to beat billions of times in one lifetime, yet fragile enough that one small blood clot can push it into danger. It can adapt to labour, to ageing, to movement, to lack of sleep, to many changes in life, but it also has limits. That is exactly why, when people reopen a blocked artery, repair a leaking valve, control an arrhythmia, transplant a new heart, or simply help a person with heart failure breathe more easily, it is not only technique, it is a form of respect for the sophistication of biology. The more science touches the human heart, the less reason it has to be arrogant. It only has more reason to be humble, and perhaps that is the greatest beauty of this entire journey. Human beings have gone from merely placing a hand on the chest to feel a heartbeat, to opening blocked vessels, seeing heart valves, reading electrical signals, replacing sections of vessels, placing devices inside the heart, transplanting new hearts, and helping hearts that once seemed to have no future continue travelling with life. The human heart is fragile, but the story of human beings saving their own hearts truly is one of the most beautiful stories in science. Because in that story there is knowledge, skill, patience, the cooperation of many minds and hands, and above all the belief that even an organ this fragile is still worth preserving for one more beat, one more day, one more stretch of life. By the time we arrive here, we begin to feel more clearly the central truth the human heart has been quietly telling us throughout this whole journey. It is not only a pump for blood. It is the place where life reveals itself through mechanics, electricity and chemistry, but also through fragility, time and hope. And perhaps it is only after seeing both its vulnerability and its capacity to be saved that we become calm enough to approach the final lesson the human heart wants to teach. Not only how it beats, but what its thousands of ordinary beats, its moments of faltering, its rescues and its quiet endurance are truly saying about the nature of a human life. And perhaps after all of this, the deepest truth about the human heart is not found in how strong it is or in how astonishingly complex it can be, but in something much quieter than that. Our lives are not made by one single grand moment, but by countless heartbeats that are silent, steady, precise, and also deeply fragile, repeating over and over across an entire lifetime. That is the 101st truth. Not something far away, but something still happening inside your own chest right now. From the first heartbeat before the body had any memory, to the intricate structure hidden safely inside the chest, to the invisible current that begins each contraction, to the quiet rivers of blood feeding the brain, the lungs, the liver, the kidneys, the muscles, and every tiny cell, and then two. The way the human heart changes with sleep, breath, emotion, age, illness, and healing, all of it leads us back to the same essential truth. The human heart is not faithful to life through grand declarations. It is faithful by repeating its work in silence, one beat after another, one day after another, 1 year after another. Perhaps that is also the most beautiful gift this journey tonight has left behind. You do not only understand the human heart more clearly in a scientific way, but you may also begin to look at your own body with a gentler gaze. You may realize that what has carried you through ordinary days, sleepless nights, emotional moments, seasons of exhaustion, and even times of recovery is a small but extraordinary organ that has been working for you almost without ever asking to be noticed. And once you understand that, many of the most ordinary rhythms of life begin to feel more meaningful. One slow breath before sleep, one gentle walk in the morning, one quiet minute in the middle of anxiety, one deep night of rest. All of these are very real ways of returning a little closer to your own human heart. The deeper science goes into the human heart, the less reason we have for arrogance, and the more reason we have for reverence. Because understanding does not make this miracle feel ordinary. Quite the opposite. It helps us see more clearly just how much ordered beauty, fragility, and endurance are living inside our own bodies. And perhaps that too is a kind of peace worth holding on to, when we realize that we are being kept here in life not by anything loud or dramatic, but by a quiet rhythm that has never given up on us. And perhaps tonight, as you lie still in the dark, the gentlest thing to remember is not that the human heart is doing something grand, but that it is still there, quietly holding you to life, one beat at a time. Thank you for taking this whole journey with Sleep by Knowledge. I wish you a truly peaceful night, a deeply restful sleep, and I hope to meet you again on the next journey, where we will once more move slowly together into another mystery of life.